Hi guys, it's Cherie here. Welcome back to another surgical tech video. Yes, you might have seen me looking just like this in another video, but that's because I am continuing on and making my content, girl. So I'm not even gonna bother changing my shirt. It is what it is. So in this video, we are gonna be talking about a question that I get asked a lot here on YouTube and on TikTok. A lot of people want to know, what is the work-life balance of a surgical tech? A lot of people are a little bit older that are interested in going to school for being a surgical tech, and they always ask, hey, what is the work-life balance like? What is it like starting school? Like, I have kids. Do you think I'm going to be able to do this program? Were you able to work while you do the program? So I'm going to give you guys my experience, and I'm going to tell you what the work-life balance was for me personally working at a hospital, and what my work-life balance is now working at a plastic surgery office. So without further ado, we're gonna get right into this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment with me down below in the comment section. Oh, that was a mouthful. Into this video, what is the work-life balance like? So you're out there, you're a little bit older, maybe you're in your 30s, or even you're younger, but you have a kid and you want to know, is it possible for me to do this? When I was starting school, I was working as a medical assistant. When I applied to school and got accepted, I knew I was gonna have to cut down on my hours. So I went from working full-time to working per diem. And so per diem was like just me picking up random shifts as I go, because the program for me was a 10-month program, and I was required to be on campus 2 days a week. Now, mind you, I went to school during COVID, so I got accepted into my program for 2020, and so most of my didactic classes were online, and then I was required to go into school on campus 2 days out of the week to go in for my lab classes. So for your lab classes, you're going to be required to go in probably really early. They're probably going to have you there early to start prepping you for what it's like when you go to clinicals and for work. Because when you start working and you go to clinicals, like, most surgeries typically tend to start at 7:30 in the morning. So for clinicals, we had to be there at 7. So for labs and for clinical, you had to be there at 7 a.m. and most jobs you're gonna find they start at 7. The first shift starts at 7 a.m. So with that in mind, if it wasn't COVID and it was regular time of life, I would be in class and in school Monday through Friday, because I had classes Monday and I had classes on Thursday and I had classes on Friday, and then I had to go in for lab work for a lab on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I was pretty much occupied with school Monday through Friday. So I would work on Friday. I remember working on Fridays because I only had one class in the morning, and I would be able to go in from like 2 p.m. to 6. Now, if you are at a more flexible job where they have night shift available, this might be something that you might be able to do, is to go to work still full-time during the night shift. And I think there's some programs that offer night classes as well, so you'd be able to go to school at nighttime and then work during the daytime. But if you're now in a 9-to-5 job, it might be a little bit hard to, and like your boss isn't as flexible, then I would say you might need to like find a different job that's going to be able to be more flexible around your school hours. But I would say for me, I knew I wasn't going to be able to work full-time anymore, so I went down to per diem. There was people in my program that had kids. If you have kids, I would say you're just going to need a really good support system, because you do need to be in class and you need to be in your lab classes. So when that part of it is finished, you go to clinicals. The last 6 months of my program, I was in clinicals. Clinicals, we were required to be in the OR. I want to say, I think it was 3 days out of the week that we had to go to the OR, I think. But again, it was 7 to 3. I was there every day like 3 days out of the week from 7 to 3. And then on top of that, I had classes. I had online classes. So on days that I wasn't in clinicals, I had classes online. So I either had to do my A&P class or pharmacology class or surgical tech 101 class. So that was that. So I would say that you are going to need to make sure you have allotted a lot of times, and this program is going to have to be your priority in order for you to pass, because attendance was a big thing for my program. If you could not miss like 2 days without you like being really sick. So that's something to think about. They're very strict in school. Like, they don't want you to miss classes unless you're absolutely like ridiculously sick and you can provide like a doctor's note or whatever, because in programs like that, like it's 10-month program, every day counts. So something to think about. So if you have kids, again, you need to have a really good support system. You can't be calling your professor and be like, hey, I don't have childcare, so I can't come, because you might get kicked out of the program if you miss too many days. So that's something to think about. So attendance is going to be super important. You can't miss too many days. You miss too many days, you might get kicked out of your program, and then you can't rejoin your program until the next start time, which is 10 months later, basically. So that's something to think about. Then when you, like I said, when you start clinicals, you're gonna have to be at the hospital for a specific amount of days. For me, it was 6 months. For 3 days a week, I had to show up 7 to 3 every single day that I was required to be there. You had to be there. And again, you don't want to miss clinical days either. The more your attendance is super important. You start missing days, you will get kicked out of your program. So that's the basis of school. You're gonna need to prioritize school above a lot of things in your life because it's important. So you don't want to get kicked out of your program. You're gonna want to make sure you show up and you are allotting time to study. So if you can't have a job that's gonna require you to be like super hands-on, that you don't have any downtime to study. Like, I used to have downtime to study when I used to go to work. Like, things would get a little bit quiet and I'll be able to sit at a desk. I sat at a desk and I would be able to, read up on something or finish up an assignment. So if you're at a job that's going to take you away completely from trying to finish up homework or something, you're going to struggle with passing your courses. So I would say you're going to need to you're going to have to cut back on hours. I know people who worked full-time. I don't know how they did it, but again, it's not impossible. Maybe they worked overnight or something. It's not impossible, but you're gonna have to definitely figure out your support system if you have kids and find a way around it to make sure you still have at least 4 to 6 hours a day that you are spending, at least 4 hours a day that you're studying. So that's super important. So you're done with clinical and you want to know what work-life balance is going to be as someone who's just starting out as surgical tech, and let's say you started working at a hospital, which a lot of people recommend that you start out at a hospital. Is a hospital for everyone? No. I've met surgical techs who started at hospitals and realized that it wasn't for them, and they went on to a surgery center. But we're talking about hospital now. You got hired at a hospital. Here's what your hours are like. A hospital is 24 hours. So a lot of hospitals, especially if it's so hospitals have different tier of trauma level. So you have level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1, which is what I worked at, is like the hospital that's going to be equipped to handle any type of emergency that comes through the door. Level 2, not as much as level 1, and obviously level 3, not as much as level 2 and level 1. Like I said, if you're working at a hospital, it's 24 hours. So you can expect to do one out of 3 of the shifts. So they have 7 to 3, which is day shift. You have 11 to 7, which is mid shift. That's what I did. You also have 11 to 9, which is mid shift, but 10 hours. You also have 7 to 5, which is 10 hours, and you would do 4 10s. So you would hear people say, oh, I work 3 12s or 4 10s or 5 5/8. 5/8 would mean you're working 73 Monday through Friday, or you're doing overnight, 8 hours. And then for 4/10s, you'll either be working 4 days a week from either 7 to 5 or 11 to 9. So those are the shifts that they have available. And if you're doing 3/12s, then you would work a 12-hour shift, so 7 to 7, 3 days out of the week. Now, if you're starting out, you are going to be working 5/8. So when you first start working, you're going to be doing orientation, and they're going to have you most likely on, if you applied for day shift, when you apply, you're going to see something called day shift and then varies. That means that at some point you're going to be able to take on whichever of those, like 3/12s, 4/10s, whatever. But when you start out and you're on orientation, they're most likely going to put you on day shift, which is 7 to 3, because the most things happen during those time, and it's the best time for you to learn everything. So that's where they're going to put you to start out. So when you start out, I did orientation for 6 weeks, I think. Yeah, I think I did orientation for 6 weeks. So you can think about your first 4 to 6 weeks at your new job on orientation, and you're going to be working 7 to 3. After orientation, you're going to start having the expectation. You can decide if you want to stay with 7 to 3 and do 5/8, or you may want to do 4/10s, or you want to do 3/12s. It's really going to be up to you and what your job has available at that time. But then the job has requirements. They're going to tell you after orientation, you're going to be required to take call if you're at a hospital, and also probably do rotating weekends. So the way how call works for my hospital that I worked at, this is an example of what your call schedule might be like. So our schedule was for every 8 weeks. And out of that 8-week period, we would have to take, I want to say 7, but it may be more, it may be less. But let's say you work 7 to 3, you decide to stay with 5/8, and you take call. Every hospital is different on how they take call, but sometimes call requirements could be full 8 hours. You have to be there available, or you have to be available. We did a really short, weird call period where you would be on call from, if you worked 7 to 3, you'd be on call from 3 to 7. Kind of weird. So like just 4 hours of call. And then there's some places where they only do overnight calls. So if you sign up, you'll be signing up for an overnight call. If you get called and you call, your call requirements will be from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next day. And that's how some hospitals do it. Because I worked 11 to 9, my call shift requirements would be overnight. So I'd have to choose, I think, 4 overnight calls, and then I had to choose 2 weekend calls. So when you're on call, again, this varies on your hospital policy, but just know that when you're on call, if you get called in, you're going to be there until they don't need you to be there. Some places you just you choose your call. You may not get called in depending on how busy things are. If there's not a trauma or whatever, they usually have teams there, and you're just going to be the standby team if something were to happen, basically. And then with weekends, again, they rotate weekends. Sometimes they'll tell you whether or not sometimes it happens if they're short staffed, they'll rotate their staff throughout the weekends because they're short staffed. But that's something to think about. If your hospital is pretty in depth with call, like my hospital was, I mean, I was on call a lot. And if you have kids, you're waking up in the middle of the night. Like I would get called in 12 a.m. One time I got called in at 3 a.m. So it really depends on what your hospital policy is going to be, but just be ready to know that if you're working at a hospital, the requirement is going to be for you to take call. So that's something to think about. Come. Oh, you're so nosy. What do you want, huh? So the requirement is going to be for you to take call and potentially work some weekends as well. And working, late hours. Yeah, just working strange hours. Like if you're not a morning person, which I wasn't, I had to take the 11 o'clock shift because I was just not a morning person. But I really wasn't interested in working 3 o'clock. Luna. I wasn't interested in working 3 o'clock, but you can decide like what's gonna work best for you. But again, if you have kids, it's gonna be a little bit difficult. But people who have kids do it. Like I said, you just need a really good support system, and you just need to make sure your daycare is taken care of. And you know, it's not impossible. It's not an impossible situation to be in. People who are nurses have kids and they kind of have the same schedule. It's really just like trying to figure out all the things you need to have figure out, which is why this video is probably helpful, because you can think ahead and plan ahead for things like that. And the way how you can plan ahead is me giving you this video and telling you that, hey, if you're really thinking about being a surgical tech, these are the things that you have to think about. You might have to take call. You might have to work weekends. Now, that's the requirement for a hospital. If the hospital is short staffed, you might not get relieved on time. That's something I need to touch base on. You might not get relieved on time, and you might be stuck in a room for longer than you thought. So you may have plans. You may have made plans with your husband or your kids or whatever, or your kids need to come out of daycare, but nobody's here to relieve you out of a room. Those are all possibilities of things that could happen. Like things that have happened to me, like I've been stuck in a room with no one to relieve me. I had to finish a case because they didn't have anyone to come and relieve you, things like that. And it's not like you can just, it's not a job where you can just walk out. Like you're scrubbed in, the surgeon needs you, there's a patient on the table. So it's like things like that to think about when it comes on to work-life balance. You have to put plans off because, oh, you know, I'm working late. Or I've had to I remember just planning my life around my call schedule or whatever, or just going out and being on call that day. Like if I took call on a Saturday or something, I would go out and have, running errands, and I would have my badge on me and little things like that, you can't drink. So it was one of those things where I would just kind of realizing that I was kind of planning my life around my call schedule, and it was kind of starting to get frustrating. Oh, I can't do that because I'm on call, and then trying to make plans with your friends was hard. That's all part of work-life balance, right? Is how you're going to be able to do the things that you want to do outside of hospital hours, right? So those are all things to think about. The call requirement can be a lot. Working weekends can be a lot, and it's just not everyone. It's not feasible for a lot of people to do. And then holidays. So if you work at a hospital and you're probably going to have to work holidays. So some hospitals allow you to choose what holidays you want to sign up for. So my hospital, there was a sign up sheet, so you would just sign up for which holidays you wanted to work for. So I would know, for me, I would coordinate with my husband. My husband works at a hospital as well, so we kind of coordinate, okay, which holiday we don't really care about, and that was Thanksgiving for us. So we'd always work Thanksgiving, but then try to have Christmas off, New Year's off, or something like that. You want to think about which holiday you don't really care about that much and which one you want to work. So if you have kids, you're probably going to want to be at home for Christmas with your kids, not want to be on call. I remember one Christmas I was on call, and it was the worst thing ever, because it was just I wanted to cook Christmas dinner and all this stuff, and I was I don't know, by the time I start cooking, something's gonna happen and they're gonna call me in. It's just it was too much for me. But in the beginning, it's fun, oh my god, I'm on call. It's all stupid and fun, in the beginning. But as time goes by, it can feel a little just dreadful to plan your life like that and to live a life like that, where you're always on call. You don't know if you're gonna get called in. I would have the worst time sleeping if I was on call overnight. I don't know if they're gonna call and wake me up out of my bed to come in or something like that. And then not being able to have holidays that I wanted to have off. Even if I had to decide I didn't care that much about Thanksgiving just because of this job. So it's just a matter of deciding which holiday doesn't mean that much to you, and which one you can be okay, I can work this one. Days like July 4th, major and minor holidays are all things to think about. So yeah. And then, but let's say you decide to work at a surgery center. Surgery centers are typically Monday through Friday. You don't take call. There's no weekend. There's no holidays. Cases do start early, but then most cases should be done by at least 4 or 5 o'clock. And then there's no call, there's no weekends, they're not open on holidays because it's a surgery center and they'll send everything out to a big hospital. And then if you're working, like right now I work at a plastic surgery office. It's not a surgery center, it's just an office, and they have an OR suite out of it, and it's kind of the same as a surgery center where it's only Monday through Friday. You don't have to. I can get away with trying to work 10-hour shifts if I want to, because sometimes you get in so early on surgery days, and because I'm required to, I'm the person that cleans my instruments and things like that, I'll have to like clean up and stuff, so that will have me there a little bit later. So some days I've had to work more than 10 hours to just finish that up, and then I'll have like a day off on like Friday or something, or a day that they don't have surgery. So obviously better work-life balance, because you're not working weekends, you're off, you know for sure you're going to be off your holidays. So if you are really interested in the job but you have kids and you don't think you can manage that stuff, a surgery center might be better for you. So you can still learn a lot at a surgery center. It's just a more limited. They don't do super big cases at certain surgery centers. That's just something to think about. But if you're just really interested in surgery in general, like a surgery center will still do it for you, and you'll still be able to learn what you want to learn, and it works for your hours and it works for your work-life balance. So it's something to think about. And yeah, that's really it. Like I said, if it's just a matter of where you're going to be working, and just making sure you have a really good support system when you're starting out your program, and having people there in your corner to back you up and to help you out if need be. But all the things I talked about are things for you to just think about if you're thinking about, you know, applying to a program, or you're going to be starting your work soon at a hospital and you want to know what call's like and things like that. I hope this video was helpful, and hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. But again, don't forget to comment down below and let me know what else you guys want me to talk about. I'll be happy to make videos on there or just answer them in the comment section. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok, and as always, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.